This is the Page Publishing Book Club. But you knew that. You knew that as soon as you heard this music. Don't tell me. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. How you doing over there? Rob Barrett's my engineer. You know what? I think the author lineups get better every week, don't you? Seriously. We have so many interesting topics. I hope we have enough time. You know, we don't ask to be born. Nobody asks to be born. And when we're little, we have absolutely no say in the way we're treated or the way we're raised. And the way we're treated and the way we're raised as children stays with us for the rest of our lives. And it has a lot to do with who we become as adults. But at some point along the way, we have to decide how we're going to respond to the way we were treated growing up. We decide how we're going to live with our demons, so to speak, and we all have them. And herein lies a treasure trove of emotions that propelled Brian Cardoza to write his book entitled The Unexpected Victim. This man is a survivor if I ever met one. Tell us about your book, Brian.
It's about me and the childhood sexual, physical, and mental abuse I suffered as a kid. And the entire book is about how it's already happened and now I get to choose how I deal with it every day. I can't change what happened, but I can change how I deal with it.
Wow. Do you talk about what happened?
In some parts of the book, yes. I tried to keep the book a little PG so that it's a book that could go into schools. You know what I mean? You know, if you use too much, colorful language, as it were, they will sometimes not allow that. And it's something that I think most kids and adults and survivors need to read due to the fact that there are very few books on the market from an actual just a survivor. You know, typically they're written by therapists or professionals in the business that have done case studies.
Right.
So I think it's important for honestly, I think there's about 4 or 5 of us on the market of where the book was 100% written by a survivor of. And those, I feel, are the most important books for people to be reading. So
how do you survive? I mean, you're a grown man now. Do you have a family of your own, or?
Well, and that's part of the reason why I don't have a family is because of the mythos that was surrounding child survivors in the 80s with the false thoughts of the vampire method. I don't know if you've ever heard of the vampire method, but they used to say that when a man has been molested as a child, he will become a pedophile. Yeah, and that's actually proven to be very, very false. But I was told and brought up to believe that because I was raped as a child, I was going to become a pedophile. So I never had kids. I didn't want that. Because I was in an abusive family, I didn't want to be the guy that would beat his wife. You know what I mean? So I never did any of that.
Oh, Brian.
It is what it is. But what kids need to know now is that because these myths still exist, that they're not real. They're just people's fear-based mongering trying to manipulate other people. That's all it is. And you can have a productive life. The things I do now are I'm a semi-successful painter, an avid writer. I'm an advocate. I'm a public speaker. I have 2 charities in my own name that we run around the nation doing art shows called Survivor Nights, but KNIGHT Nights, where we do survivor art. And when I mean survivor art, I'm not talking about just what I went through, but if you're a cancer survivor, I want your art so we can show it. If you're a domestic abuse survivor, we want your art so we can show it. We're trying to build communities through art. And then I have a speaker show called Chasing Immortality, where we have 6 different speakers. The last one we had was went from metastasized cancer survivor to jail recidivism. And so we try to bring awareness to these programs and a change of perception.
It's amazing, Brian. And this is what you've done. This is what you've dedicated your life to.
Well, that's really honestly after many years of really terrible choices. In 1997, I was arrested I was in a car with 2 guys that were arrested with 4 ounces of crystal meth and a 357. And I had to do a little bit of time in jail. And jail was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. It really was, because since 97, I have been clean, because of that incident. It was just like, well, I need to get my head straight. I need to pop that head out and, and not go back to jail.
Right.
So that, don't get it twisted. I've made some mistakes and some doozies, but at the end of the day, it's just like my abuse. I can't go back in time and change anything. Only thing I can do is every morning wake up and be like, you know what, today's going to be better than yesterday. And even if it's not, when I go to bed, it's going to be better than yesterday. And that's just the way it's going to be.
Yep. Taking control of your life and doing the best you can one day at a time. I mean, think about it. That's all we get. We only get one day at a time. And Brian, by the way, is writing another book about his years going through counseling, and I am sure we'll hear more from him down the road. Thank you so much, Brian. So here's another example of not being able to control certain things in your life. Just like Brian couldn't control the environment he was brought up in until he grew up, Barry Johns Potter didn't even know he was living with a serious health issue. And it's why he wrote Understanding Type 2 Diabetes, The Chemistry of Diabetes. Barry.
I got this disease, and I didn't know I had it for many, many years. Apparently, what doctors tell you is you have it for 10 to 12 years before you even realize it. So I was working on roofs in California. I was a roofing contractor, and I had it for a long time. I was unaware of it, and I was able to do my work, which was pretty physical. It was extremely physical. I was a commercial industrial roofer, and I was up on roofs working away, and I had no idea that I had anything wrong with me. And one day I just went to a doctor to get a physical since I hadn't had one in about 20 years. And he said, you're really healthy, your cholesterol is great, everything looks fine, but you're either a raging diabetic or we made a mistake at the lab. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, your blood sugar is almost 400, and normal is 90 to 120. Oh. And I was just appalled. I just couldn't believe it because I felt healthy. I was at the same weight I'd been for the last 30 years, a very physically fit guy, and I just had no idea. So we retested, and it came back. The second test was at 340. It varies every day. It goes up and down.
Wow. So
I was totally shocked, and they put me on some drugs that gave me diarrhea. They hurt my joints, and I'm climbing ladders all day when I can't have sore ankles and things like that. And then one of the drugs said I couldn't be in the sun. Well, on the warning. So I'm just thinking, this is crazy. This is not going to work. And so I finally got him to give me a referral to an endocrinologist. He lowered the dose of the one drug that gave me diarrhea, and he got me another drug that was kind of brand new. And I kept questioning him on this drug because it was brand new. And I was a biology major in college. My dad was a dentist. My sister's a dietitian. I know about stuff. And I wanted to know more about it. And he kept telling me, oh, it's fine. It's no big deal. So I stayed on it for about 6 years, and with pretty good success. He kept my blood sugar down, and then suddenly they weren't working anymore, and I started doing some research on it, and I found out that the new drug was actually giving some people pancreatic cancer. So the drug Actos is the one they had me on that causes bladder cancer, and there was a sister drug called Avandia. It's the same class of drug but made by a different company, and it was proven to cause heart attacks and strokes. They banned it in Europe. Flat out banned it. And they still allow it to be sold in America today. So I got really mad, and I started doing research. And I did about 10 years worth of research, and I found out that there is a way to beat this disease. You just have to change your entire life. You got to watch what you eat. You've got to exercise more than I was even getting from working on the roofs. And vitamins and supplements are very important. They can really radically change the condition of your body if you pay attention. So the book just explains basically how to survive this. And I'm now, I'm almost 65. I'll be 65 in April, and I'm in great shape. I follow this little regimen of eating properly and exercising and doing things, and I take a lot of vitamins and supplements, and they work very well. In the book, I write that if you're a student of history and you're familiar with what Eisenhower said, he warned us about the military-industrial complex. Well, now we have the pharmaceutical-industrial complex. They are very powerful, and they're just jamming stuff down our throats, and they basically control the FDA. They tell the FDA what to do, and it's high time that stops.
Don't even get me started on the pharmaceutical industry. I'll tell you, Barry, I agree with you, something definitely has to be done there. But I think we need to clarify, Barry did not give up pharmaceuticals entirely. but he researches every drug he's given, doesn't necessarily take every drug he's given, and they're only part of an overall regimen that, as he said, includes pharmaceuticals. Thank you, Barry. All right, we're going to lighten things up a little bit. Margaret Bouteille, great name, right? She has been there, done that. Live to Tell, that is the name of her book, and it is safe to assume it's true. What a ride this actor, horse masseuse, and licensed cosmetologist has had. McGarrett.
It's about how my life started off with a crazy bang. My mom getting stampeded by a herd of cattle, which was how I decided to get born 2 weeks early. That started off like that, and how people finding me and God's blessings that helped me escape a lot of those incidences in my life that normally another person would have been found dead on the side of the road or sitting in prison for life, or all kinds of incidences. I mean, I've witnessed people being murdered, and people I met, things I went through, things that I tried to accomplish, things that I was afraid to do.
Where did you grow up? Where did all this begin?
It began in Bellingham, Mass.
So what happened with the Allman Brothers? Where were you? What happened?
I was 17, and I was told to meet a friend, Peter Green from Fleetwood Mac, and he found me in a crowd. That was another game changer in my life. He brought me to the Rolling Stones concert when they were playing in Boston back in 1969 or 68, 69. And I was tripping. I was high. And he's the one that came to me. So he told me to go back to the tea party to meet a friend of his. And his friend said, "Oh, we can't put you up." And I thought, well, no big deal. So Dickie Betts from the Allman Brothers saw me just floundering, and he said, "You got a place to stay?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, y'all can come stay with me." And I thought, well, he's not that big. And I thought he was one of the workers there playing one of the musicians' guitars. And I thought, how rude to play somebody else's guitar. And next thing I know, when he was done, fiddling with the guitar and I was just floating around there, he said, "Come on, we're going now." And so I followed him out, and we got into this van. And I went, uh-oh. I got really scared. And I thought, oh, my God. Because when I got in, it was a van full of men. And I choked with abject fear. And then I heard all these Southern accents, and they were really nice. And I thought, if I act scared, they will take advantage of that. Oh, my God, who are these guys? And I found out that they were the guys who played that night.
So did you stay with them?
I did. Dickie said, "Don't worry, I'm not going to touch you." So I thought, oh, that was nice. And I laid down in the bed, and it was a skinny single bed. And Jim Payne, who was one of the main roadies and a very dear friend of the brothers, and so he was in the next bed. But he had a girl. They were doing the deed. The deed. They were doing the deed. And I had never seen anything like that in my life. And I was like, oh, my God. So I climbed the bed with Dickie, and I was like, "Oh, please don't touch me. Please don't touch me." And he didn't. He just asked me to take my trousers off because they were made of wool, and they were scratching him. And he was an absolute angel. And so I fell sound asleep, slept the night through, woke up, he was gone, and I was by myself. And next thing I know, this tall, red-headed guy walks in, or strawberry blonde, walks and sits on the bed next to me. And I thought, what the hell is this? Who is it? Why is he sitting here? Well, he's got that bed to sit on. Why is he sitting on this bed? Turned out it was Duane Allman, and he took a shine to me, and he kept me with him for a while.
What do you mean he kept you with him?
Duane just piled me into the van with them when they took off for New York City.
And you went with them to New York City?
Yeah.
Like your mom didn't wonder where you were?
I had run away by then.
You ran away from home by then? How long did you hang out with these guys?
Yeah.
Wow. And all this is in your book?
Yeah.
That's a story.
I hung out with them steadily for about a month when I was 17. They had to get back there in Georgia, and I couldn't go with them because I was too young, and I would have been considered a runaway. So anyway, I hitchhiked, and some miracle angel picked me up. I swear, God put my angel with me, because I saw my angel when I was 5 years old. I saw him.
Wow. So you've just had this crazy life that you felt it was time to tell the story.
After so many people had been bugging me about it, and finally my husband, he just wouldn't leave me alone. He said, write it. So I thought, okay, fine. I will write it. I will tell people who tell me I need to write a book that, okay, I wrote a book. Okay, I wrote it. I submitted it. Leave me alone.
All right, McGarrett, we'll leave you alone, and I know there's more stories where that came from. We have to take a short break, but we will be right back with a former member of the legendary Florida A&M University Marching Band, so sit tight. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books, and unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them, and they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
Hey, thanks for coming back to the Page Publishing Book Club. Curtis Inabinet was a saxophone player in the legendary Florida A&M University Marching Band from 1977 through 1979. That's the title of his book. The History of the 100 is the subtitle, and Curtis says there's never been a book that delves this deeply into this historic marching band. Curtis.
This band has led the way, paved the way for many other bands. It's a band of firsts. Its creator, Dr. William Foster, came up with 30 innovative ideas that marching bands still use to this day. And he wrote a book on marching bands that is used by university bands to this day. So, the book is legendary, and it has a storied history. We're talking 5 or 6 Super Bowls. The most memorable one was the performance with Prince before he died. So the band is definitely legendary. We're talking the only HBCU band in the United States to ever receive the Sutler Award, which is the highest award that any marching band can receive. So, when I say legendary, I mean legendary. Willard Scott, the former, Today Show host. Yeah, when he wrote his book, America is My Neighborhood, I think was the title. I could be wrong, but he dedicated a full chapter in his book to the Florida A&M University Marching Band. But as far as books being written, complete books, this is the first. I cover the times of Dr. Foster when he was an undergraduate student at the University of Kansas, when he was not allowed to march in their band or perform publicly because of the color of his skin. But then, even with those setbacks, he creates one of the greatest marching bands that ever, existed. Once he got to Florida A&M, he did have a passion to create a marching band that was better than any white marching band in existence. And those were his words because of the experience he had at the University of Kansas. He wanted to create something better. And, he did. To prove a point, the Florida A&M University Marching Band received the Sutler Award 4 years before the University of Kansas received it.
What's the single most important thing you want people to get out of this book, Curtis?
Well, the historic value. I mean, this book covers a lot. This book can be used in journalism classes. It can be used in music departments. It can be used in law classes, law schools. And I say law classes and law schools because of the death of the drum major that happened a few years ago. And I cover the entire trial and the aftermath and the whole 9 yards. So this book can be used in a lot of venues, different venues. And it can take on many different avenues if used properly. Right. So I guess that's the main thing. But as far as band students, it would be a good book to read to actually experience some of the ups and downs and ins and outs that actually happens in preparation for a halftime show, during the halftime show. But also, I covered a lot of the racial things that happened in the 1960s because of marching bands. And the Florida A&M band experienced a lot of those as well.
Yeah, Curtis makes mention of being able to use this book, for instance, in a law class, and he's talking about the hazing death. You remember, Rob, the hazing death of the band's drum major? That was back in 2011. 12 former band members, I believe, were charged with manslaughter. A very, very dark time in the band's otherwise storied history, and Curtis covers all of it. Thank you. Charlie Madison has some very strong feelings about God in our lives and in our culture, and he suggests we bring God back to America. That is the title of his book. Charlie.
I think that we removed God when we took prayer and the Ten Commandments out of schools and government buildings, and people stopped honoring the Ten Commandments, and we became a nation of everybody other than Christians. We're not a Christian nation anymore. We started out as a Christian nation.
How do we bring God back to America? Don't we have a problem with separation of church and state?
I'm not familiar with all of those things. I'm just telling you what I believe would be a solution. I believe that if we became a Christian nation again, which is what we were before we threw God and the Ten Commandments out of the government buildings and schools, I think things would be much better. I think that most people aren't aware that the two forces that govern the world, a force of good and a force of evil. When you remove God from any place, he's replaced by Satan. Whether it's known or whether it's believed, the fact is if you remove God, he's replaced by Satan. And we removed God in 1963 with the Constitution, where they said God, the Constitution was not a godly instrument. So God shouldn't be in the schools or any public buildings. You can't even put the placards up of the Ten Commandments or things like that. So my book is a throwback, making predictions of things that I've seen happen since we removed prayer and the Ten Commandments from schools, and to how it's equated into polluting society. But that's just my view.
Okay, do you suggest that we bring it back?
Yes, that would be my suggestion. If we were a Christian nation again, I believe 85% of our problems would be eliminated.
Do you make suggestions on how we can do that in your book?
Yes, I do. For instance, we have to become a Christian nation again. We have to put prayer back in schools and in government buildings, and we have to give respect to who actually, when we first formed this country, we were a Christian nation, because of the pilgrims who were leaving England coming here because of religious persecutions. So we were a Christian nation up until 1963, when Madalyn Murray O'Hair was instrumental in having prayer taken out of schools. And then later in 1980, the Ten Commandments was taken out. So I think those things were important.
And you see that as the reason we're in the state that we're in today?
Some of it.
Okay.
Not all, but some.
All right. Well, I would think that there's going to be people on both sides of that issue, right?
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a winner and there's always a loser. If you look at America now, we don't look like we're winning anything.
What do you mean by that?
How do you mean? What do I mean by that? I mean, when we removed prayer and the Ten Commandments from the American system, one of the first detrimental things to happen was the assassination of President Kennedy, who was our first Catholic president. And he was assassinated in office. Not a good thing. But I think when we remove prayer from the Constitution and from schools and from church and from government buildings, as I said, you remove God, he's replaced by Satan. It's just the two forces. It's either to the right or to the left. I don't think you can straddle the fence on it.
All right, Charlie, finally, Vincent James takes us back in time to learn a lesson that he says applies to today. The name of his book, The Beggar's Hope.
It's a story about first century Rome, and it's got a theme that applies, I think, to today. Helping each other, self-sacrifice, not relying on politicians to promise you this and that. everyone has an agenda, and people must help each other. It's a stew of ancient Rome flavored with 21st century spices. That's kind of like a way to describe it.
All I have here is your blurb, and it says, Emperor Tiberius rules a Rome where patrician life is reaching its luxurious zenith. But after the emperor's nephew is violently murdered, the aristocratic lifestyle immediately becomes hazardous. The relentless partying of the wealthy is suddenly interrupted. Someone is targeting the nobles of Rome. The casualties begin to mount, and the perpetrators seem impossible to catch. The gossips dub them the Palatine Bandits. Palatine?
Yeah.
And a true crime wave begins.
It's about these young people growing up, and they become involved in the political machinations of Tiberius and Pontius Pilate, and they go to Jerusalem, get involved there. It's a new kind of story that spun around the crucifixion and that sort of thing. I wanted to make it more something fresh, something that hasn't been done before. The real things in life. You must help others. If everyone helps each other, the world will be a better place. That basically is the message. That's important enough. I've been working on this for 6 or 7 years. And I've got thousands of pages. It's going to be longer than Kino Dune or The Lord of the Rings. It's going to be bigger than those. Lengthwise, it's a little over 2,300 pages. And I've got down to the very climax. I'm working on it now. It'll be 3 books long. I've got the second one already ready to publish. The first one's just coming out. And about a year ago, I thought, well, I better get this started. So I submitted the first one, and now it's coming out. And the second one's sitting there waiting in a safe on a CD. And then in a few hundred pages, I'll have the whole thing completed. So I sure hope people like it.
I hope they do too. I hope they like all of the books that we feature on the Page Publishing Book Club, right, Rob? I mean, there's certainly something for everyone, but do you see how many ways there are to go if you really want to write that book? Just, start with yourself. Look at your own life. You'll probably get a few ideas. We will bring you more ways to go when we come back next week. And don't forget, you can go to 710WOR.iHeart.com and download the shows whenever you want. Thank you so much for stopping by. Have a good night, Rob. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. This is the Page Publishing Book Club, only on 710 WOR. Have a great weekend.